hello. Didn't see you there. My name's Chester. Chester Appleton. The second most interesting man in the world. What am I doing? Just reading a little book. The Duck That Won the Lottery. 100 New Experiments for the Armchair Philosopher. Written by Julian Baggini. What is this book about, you ask? Well, as we can see by the title, it is 100 bold statements made by several people around the world, and Baggini intelligently addresses these fallacies in which flabbergasts the mind.
Good evening, Chester. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. Well, indeed.
I have a few questions for you.
Yes?
First, I would like to ask you, what were your thoughts on this topic before you started reading?
May you ask the question again?
I say, what were your thoughts on this topic before you started reading?
Thoughts on the topic? Well, there are several topics addressed in way more than several topics addressed in the book. Impossible to address just one in this broad question. But each topic he addressed sparked imagination and curiosity throughout the mind, brain, body, and soul. I will go over 3 individual parts later in our interview in detail. But he did a broad look at addressing incorrect statements made throughout the book. Yes, broad statements indeed. I now know many incorrect statements are made every single day by such ignorant people. And there's nothing we can do about it except fix those damn fallacies.
Chester, are you done with your smoking of tobacco?
Yes, I am.
Well, good. I have another question for you. What are 3 parts of the book that you found particularly valuable and or interesting? And why do you find each one valuable and interesting?
Well, let me just say the first one has a very interesting title. Sexy Like Me, which is true, as you can tell. My mustache is very sexy. Sexy Like Me, about automorphism. The forests of the world hum up the erotic. Nature swells with sex, by J. Griffiths Wilde. I choose this as my first one simply because it is the first topic that he addresses that just is so weird that I actually read in depth and detail and made me continue reading this book. I was able to read this and just be so impressed by what he was talking about. Such an interesting topic, actually, because I've never really thought about the world and trees having sex.
And why is that?
Because you normally don't think of trees having sex, but apparently they do. So that's where our author Baggini addresses it in the most interesting ways. Let me take a quote, for example. Third, and most importantly, animal sex usually has little in common with human eroticism. That is very true.
Except for doggy style.
Except for doggy style. Because humans have sex not only for breeding, unlike animals. Therefore, and the word erotic is used in not breeding terms. So this is why I chose Sexy Like Me. And now for my second point of interest in this book. That way lies disaster, slippery slopes. It is the beginning of a very long and slippery slope, and none of us can say where it would end up. By Robert Hazel, Professor of Government. I found this piece very valuable because slippery slopes are fallacies made every day. I've heard 3 today, actually. Maybe 4. Hold on. Tyler, Stevie, the other Stevie, Rob. Okay, it was 4 different slippery slopes. I'm actually now British.
What about Julie?
Julie. Was that Julie? I don't remember. Well, anyways, back to the slippery slopes, because that's what's important here, is it not? Right. The slippery slopes I mentioned a couple times throughout this book, actually, and I just chose this one because it's just so vague, I might as well address it, because there's no actual topic he says. It's just about slippery slopes. But see, the thing that catches my information is it's about slippery slopes, and yet it is a slippery slope. May I take an example? Or I could just define it for you, actually, from a quote, actually. Page 54, actually.
Alright, read it, please.
A slippery slope argument can carry some weight if there is a high probability that the unacceptable consequence will in fact happen and is actually unacceptable. What we know about slippery slopes is it is just absurd, alright? I mean, obviously, I've been taught this by a very incredible professor, pretty handsome too, or, I don't know. I mean, he's nice, he's pretty funny. A slippery slope is when you make one statement and the following statement you assume will happen because of the first statement. It's like rolling down a bloody hill full of sand and death. For example, that car is white. Because that car is white, it's probably be driven by someone. That someone could be driving that car. And the person driving the car probably is rich because it's a Lexus. And since they're rich, they probably have 4 kids. And all 4 kids probably have their own cars, and each of those cars are white. That's an assumption made from the slippery slope, alright? Now, that is my second most valuable information. And for the third topic I'm choosing is my luck's got to change, the gambler's fallacy. It's actually a pretty long statement made. Are you ready? He's due to win. Made by Damon Hack of the New York Times. See, I just switched my accent again, I don't know what happens. I apologize, because the British just comes out. But I guess if you want me to keep going with the Irish accent, I could. Why I chose he's due to win is because everyone says it. Everyone wants it to happen. Like, you're due for a nice day, or I'm due to find $20 on the ground, because I haven't found $20 on the ground in a long time, which is true. Or, I'm rolling the dice, and I just need 6. And I'm saying, oh, I'm due to win. That's a perfect example, because it's taken right from the book. You can't just say you're due to win. That is so broad. That's just my opinion, though. But personally, I find his opinion very intelligent and interesting. And this is why I chose this one, because this applies to everyday life, to every person who says this fallacy, actually. Even though I do, and I am one of the most incredible people in the world. Second. But I still make the mistake, actually. I could find an example in here where he states it very nicely. Well, there's not one said example, but he goes on and he uses a math equation, like a statistic type thing, to prove just how unlikely things are. I don't want to get into it because it's a whole paragraph and that would be a waste of time because you've read this damn book. Yeah, that's about all I have to say for this one. Now, what stinks about this is I only had to choose, or I only could choose 3 topics. But there were 100. That is just some number I can't even, 3 out of 100? I can't even comprehend that mind of my mind.
I believe that's 3%.
No, that's not right. It's not. It's 3 out of 100.
My bad.
There's, yeah, it's
My bad.
It's
Okay,
not.
okay.
It's not. It's not 3%. Okay, settle down. Fuck. So yes, but if I could pick other topics, I would. There's so many. I'm actually going to give this book to my father because he's interested in reading too.
Your father, Craig?
Craig Ferguson.
Ferguson?
Yeah.
Sir Chester, I have yet another question for you.
What?
Well, in what ways have you been able, and will you be able, to use any of the information from the book to improve your life, the world, or both?
Oh, that's a good question, actually.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Well, to address the question. Sorry,
I already did.
My mustache is itchy. Back off. I think to be able to use these, to know every fallacy and use it in everyday context, you'd have to be a pretty intelligent philosopher, as is Julian Baggini, or how do you pronounce his name? Pardon me if I'm saying it wrong. Baggini? I don't know, it could be Italian.
I think it might be spaghetti.
Julian Spaghetti?
Possibly.
It's Julian.
Carry on.
Oh, okay. Okay. It's Julian Baggini. Anyway, you'd have to be a pretty intelligent philosopher to know all the fallacies and to address people in everyday life. Because anyone can say, I'm just going to turn to a random page here. Vesius pseudo-wisdom. Now, I have no idea what that is. I would have to reread it. But that is just some ridiculous name for some fallacy that he knows. Or, well, that one's easy. Bad example. False singulars. Any damn fallacy could be used in everyday context. And if I was intelligent enough to know all of them, I would. And I would address people like he does. Now, he addresses some important people like George W. Bush and other people. Now, there's the Prime Minister or some other stuff. He does a lot of political stuff in here. So I don't know if I would do that, because I don't think I would write a book. But if I heard my friend, for example, say he's due to win, I would bust this out and be like, yo, no, that shit ain't right, alright, y'all? He ain't due to win. And I would go into full detail about why he's not due to win.
Is that all you have, Chester?
Yes.
Alright, very well. Moving on.
We're moving.
We're moving to the next question.